See, not so many slides, just a couple. Right. So I work for a company called Appgate. Appgate specializes in software-defined perimeter, and we actually call it people-defined perimeter. And this is really important because you have probably seen over the last while, the dots are different. Let me just minimize this as well because we don't need to see me. There we go. And you've seen how everything has changed over not in the last 6 months, but the last couple of years with the pandemic and the way that people work around the world and within your specific region as well. So the problem is the perimeter has changed. And what do we mean by that? In the old days, all of your data would have been in a data center, would have been somewhere that you could secure, you could put a perimeter around it, you would have your firewalls, you would allow people in, you would control who was coming in, how they were coming in, that kind of thing. But that's changed. We now have what's called a hybrid workforce, which basically means that with COVID and the pandemic, everybody started working from home. Changed everything. VPN sales went through the roof. It was unbelievable. Because how do you get people who are working from home access to the data that you're trying to work with, trying to protect, So this is where Appgate is really strong. We understand that the perimeter has changed, and we understand that people are also using hybrid cloud solutions. So maybe some of your data is still on-premise in a data center. Maybe you've moved some of it into a cloud. Maybe you're using multiple cloud solutions, Azure, AWS, GCP. The other thing that's happened is people like their own devices. You may actually even be watching this on your own phone, on your own iPad, on your own MacBook. And so how, as a network administrator, how as a security officer, how do you protect your data from a machine that you don't even control? And then, of course, cyber attacks are huge at the moment. The National Cybersecurity Centre here in England had a Cyber UK conference last week, and we had ministers, people from the British, and they were all talking about the increased amount of traffic, of cyber attacks, of the things that are happening. And so this is really important. The other element is human error. It is so easy to control your data, but at the same time, it's so easy to get people to click on that link that they shouldn't be clicking on. You can't control people. You've all been in the industry long enough to understand that the users are the biggest part of our headaches. But they're just human and they make mistakes. That's what happens, right? So how do you control that? So for us at Appgate, we decided a long time ago that instead of trying to control the data center perimeter, we're going to control the user and the device. So that user and that device, they become the new perimeter. This is now what we're looking after. So the solution, of course, is Appgate, is the easy answer. You've probably seen a lot of marketing around zero trust. You've probably heard this a lot of places. You've probably seen YouTube videos and things. And this is really important. Zero trust is not a tool. It's not a piece of software you can buy. It is a strategy. And Appgate falls into that strategy perfectly, because the very first thing that happens when someone wants to access your data is they need network access. And Appgate is the leader in the industry for zero trust network access. That's really important. So there's an architecture we work with in America. There's a thing called the National Institute Standards of Technology. People on our team, colleagues in America have worked with the National Institute to create the standards that have been enforced. You may have seen Joe Biden, after they had that little problem with the Colonial Pipeline, he's now enforcing all federal places in America need to have a zero trust approach. And then this is going to fall into play as well. It's going to spread. If you want to do business with people in your organization, if you want to secure your supply chain, if you want to connect to other members within your region, you're going to have to adopt a zero trust network access, because you just generally don't know who's accessing your network, right? And we've also started to build, how to deliver this. And let me move on to the next slide quickly. So, why would you want to deploy a zero trust solution? And do you think that you've actually got one already? I mean, are you looking at your current technology and thinking, well, yeah, it's okay, it's good enough? Well, there's things that you need to take into consideration. How often are you being attacked, and how much has that increased in the last year or so? How do you improve people's productivity? How complicated are the tools that you've got? Do they actually do the things that you need them to do as easily as possible? and what would be the cost of an actual data breach if worst comes to worst. So let's have a look at Appgate. People define security. As an organization, the first thing we would do is we take a look at where you are in your journey. Have you looked at zero trust before? Have you got tools in place already? And are you just finishing it off? Are you just trying to get to a place where everything is neat and tidy? We can work with you on that. We can work with you, and Head Technology are experts at this as well. And I would highly recommend you spend time talking to them, explain to them what your requirements are, explain to them what your problems are, and how. And Head Technology, Alexander, will be very, very happy to help you with any of that. So here is the technical part of this. This is where it gets interesting for me as a technical person. Now I can start to explain what Appgate actually really does and why it's different to other tools. So we're going to put here cloaked infrastructure. Let's think about that for a second. If you're doing reconnaissance if you're a hacker and you're trying to get into a system, you're going to do reconnaissance. You're going to use tools like Wireshark to try and find out where the VPN connectors are, where the weak links are. With Appgate SDP, we can cloak your entire infrastructure. And that's important because if you can't see infrastructure, your reconnaissance will come back as zero. We're also very people-centric. This is what we worked out a long time ago, is that you can't control your data center anymore. You need to control the people that are accessing your data center. So we want to know who the users are. We want to know what devices they're on. We want to know where they're calling us from. We want to be able to control that. And once we understand that, then we can allow them onto our network. Not only that, but people move. Things change. People install software. They remove software. Anything can happen. So we have to make this dynamic and we have to make it continuous. And Appgate is a leader at this. Other tools in the marketplace will say, oh yeah, we do this. Actually, what they really do is like every 24 hours, they'll refresh those entitlements. What we do at Appgate is absolutely dynamic. And what we create, which is different to traditional VPN solutions, we create micro perimeters. And what I mean by that is we can actually connect to multiple different locations at the exact same time. And it's programmable, it's adaptable, we have API solutions. So Appgate SDP is the tool that you would use to allow people onto your network. And that's really important. But the next thing that Appgate does is we integrate with other tools in your network to ensure that the information that we provided is accurate. So we might ask for CrowdStrike or Intune for your compliance policy. We might ask your MDM solution. So we can interact with other tools. We can take information that we find and we can pass them to the other tools that you have as well. So here are the benefits of Appgate SDP. You might have a very real VPN remote access issue. You might have users working from anywhere at the moment, and they need to have a standardized, simple approach to be able to do their work. Because let's face facts, users just want to do their jobs. They don't want to do IT support. They want to do the work that they need to do. And they can do this in multiple different ways from different locations. So you might have cloud and hybrid deployments. You might be moving your data from premise to the cloud. And how do you control that? And how many firewall changes are required to move that data and still give your end users access with a minimum amount of disruption? Appgate can help you with that as well. We also have zero trust for the cloud, which means that if you do have a cloud solution in place, and you may have authentication in place for that, but how do you actually trust people from around the world, and how do you control that as well? So third-party access, secure DevOps, all of these different real-world problems that we can solve for you. So Appgate is purpose-built, it is flexible and agile, it is simple to administer. Your users will have a simpler and better experience, a more secure experience, and you'll benefit from operational efficiency. And anyone who's ever had to spend time building firewall rules will understand that operational efficiency. And Head Technology is your trusted partner. You can't go wrong. So now I'm going to show you exactly how Appgate works. Excuse me. Okay. So there are two components with Appgate. The first one is the client, and the second one would be the appliance. So going back to the client, again, for us, that is the number one thing. The client is the center of everything. We want to know who the user is. We want to know what the device is, and that is installed on our Appgate client. The Appgate client is a piece of software. It runs on any operating system, Windows, Mac OS, Linux. It also runs on mobile devices, so iOS, iPadOS, Chrome OS, Android. So we pretty much every operating system, you can get the client. And that's important for two reasons. One, it means the end user experience is identical if I'm on my iPad or if I'm on my MacBook or if I'm on my Linux, my Windows machine. But it also allows for those devices from third-party companies or devices that are not part of your MDM solution. If I have my own personal phone and I know that your MDM software can wipe my photographs, I'm not going to allow you to put an MDM profile on. So BYOD, bring your own device. How do you control that? Well, with Appgate, it's a client. It's not an administration tool. It's a client. It's a piece of software. And so you can use that as part of your BYOD solution. So that's the Appgate client, very, very important. The next thing we have, the other component would be the appliance. Now, the appliance comes in multiple different forms. In the old days, it would be a hardware appliance. Today, it's an image. So you can use it with any of your hypervisor solutions, so VMware, Hyper-V. And of course, it's available in the cloud. Very easy to configure. In fact, we're in the marketplace in AWS, Azure, and GCP. You're very welcome to go and have a test run there. I would recommend bring your own license version. Very simple to configure. And of course, again, we can help you with that. So how does it all work? The very first thing you do with your appliance is you have functions. And the two most important functions would be the controller and the gateway. Now, logically, you would place these in anywhere on your network. And this is really important with Appgate as well, is that we are available. It's a piece of software and it can be deployed anywhere on your network. We don't dictate to you where it is. You tell us where you need it to be. So now you place your controller as close to your identity provider as possible. But the controller, the very first thing that happens when you build the controller is it becomes a certificate authority. We haven't reinvented this. This is a very standard way of doing this work, but the certificate is vitally important. The clients are enrolled with the controller. So the certificate is now placed on the controller, the certificate is with the client, and there's mutual TLS that takes place. So what that means is that the controller knows exactly who the client is because they share the same certificate. Now, the next thing that we do at Appgate, and this is unique, this is different to what we do with VPNs, is that the controller cloaks the rest of your network by dropping any packet that doesn't have the certificate in there. In the old days, you probably heard of it as port knocking. And what happens is any other piece of, so with a VPN, for example, let's put it this way. With a VPN, you have to have a VPN connector. That VPN connector needs to be exposed to the internet, has to have a public facing port. And as soon as someone reaches that port with some traffic, that VPN connector will respond in some shape or form. The way I explain it is if the telephone rings, someone's going to pick it up. So that's how VPN is done by default. What our controller does is that the packets that don't have the certificate in, it just drops them, and thereby cloaking the rest of the network. As soon as a packet with the actual certificate reaches the controller, as soon as the client reaches the controller on port using UDP port 53, the controller, we call this single packet authorization, SPA. The controller then recognizes the client, says, I know who you are, and begins the communication. And once that communication, that mutual TLS begins, the controller then starts to interrogate that client and find out what happens next. First thing it does is it goes off to your identity provider. So we rely on a connection to maybe your Active Directory, Azure AD. We work with multiple third-party tools as well. Again, Head Technology can help you with that. But what we're looking at is the way that the user's groups and roles within your identity provider. And now the controller has authenticated who this user is, it then starts to look at the device itself. It wants to understand, and we've got questions out of the box, things like, which operating system are you using? We do GeoIP. So what that means is, why is this client trying to connect from North Korea? I don't want that. So you can control the location of where these devices are accessing you from, time of day. Has it been patched? Is it running antivirus? all these different questions. And this sounds familiar because you've probably heard of network access control. And what we've done at Appgate is not only have we moved the VPN and created a whole new Appgate SDP solution, we've actually moved the network access control, your NAC solution, and put that on the perimeter as well. So now all of those questions are being asked of your client before they even get access to your network. So Appgate SDP is a VPN and a network access control replacement tool. So at this point, the controller has established that the user's identity. We've done what we call device posturing. We have what we call a multi-dimensional profile of the client. And at that moment in time, based on who that user is and what device they have, we then create what we call a live entitlement. And that live entitlement is passed to the client. And at this point, all communication to the controller stops. The client now has all the details of the gateways. Now, the gateways are really simple tools. The controller is the policy definition point. It's where you create all your policies, you create all your entitlements, you create all your conditions. You do that with the controller. You do all your authentication and authorization. But once that has happened, the client then has all the details of the gateway, and the gateway is the policy enforcement point, which means that the gateway is going to allow the client access to the applications that it is allowed access to at that moment in time. So on the right-hand side here, you'll see there are 3 different applications. Now, with a traditional VPN controller, and if you've ever configured VPNs, you're allowed to be, like with certain vendors, you're allowed to be only in one group. So once I've configured my groups with my VPN connector, and then someone comes up with another question, oh, please, can I have access to this other thing? Then you have to decide, well, which group do I put them in next? How do I do that? Well, what happens is you sort of add a little bit of extra entitlement. And over time, these things drift. And what we call it is over entitlement. So you've probably seen with some networks that you've got access to, maybe you've got access to the finance area, but you can also have a look and see maybe a little bit of the marketing. You can see a little bit, maybe the IT. You can have a look around at the rest of the network. You have what's known as over entitlement. With Appgate SDP, we remove that completely. You only get access to the application that you're allowed access to based on who you are, the device you've got, and at that moment in time. And that's what the gateway is checking. So again, mutual TLS, it's all encrypted. We've made sure that the entitlement hasn't been tampered with in any shape or form. And at this, now I'm allowed access to that particular application. We call it a dynamic segment of one, and it's built. So that's quite important. The next thing that happens is we continuously monitor for any context changes. And what I mean by that is if I'm working in the office and I've got access to the tools in the office, resources in the office that I've got access to, and then I go home, I'm now working from home, for example, my access to that particular application will be removed, and I might get access to a lighter application or a different application because I'm no longer working in the office. Or anything could change. I might install software that I should not install. I might remove software that I'm not allowed to remove. Anything changes on that client based on the compliance policy of your organization, the entitlement is renewed. A message is sent to the controller, a new entitlement is delivered, and then that entitlement allows access to the different application. And again, that's very different to the way that VPNs work. You may have other tools in the background that are doing like permission access management and things like that. But what we're doing at Appgate is the actual network access management. The client is allowed access to the network, and after that, the rest of your tools would kick in. So let's have a look at the different access options. We have the client SDP, which is the normal client that you'll see in a few minutes when I do the demonstration. And again, you can see by the orange dots that goes on the control plane. So this is the controller doing the authorization. And once the entitlement has been created, the user then gets access to the gateway on the data plane. We also have what we call a headless client. So if you have applications that need to talk to each other, servers that need to talk to each other, it's a headless client And again, the same process is followed. We're about to release, in fact, you can find it in GitHub, a beta version of our sidecar client for Kubernetes. This actually injects the sidecar into the pod, which is unique. We're very proud of that. And then we have a client browser access, a portal. So if you have people accessing your organization that don't want a client installed in the machine, you can force them through the Appgate portal, which again has a very similar, it has the exact same authentication. The portal goes off to the controller and will provide you with access to the applications or workloads, again, based on the entitlements that you have. So some of this might look very familiar. With a VPN, you're thinking, okay, so I've got a VPN and my VPN connects me to my connector and I can get access to them. What else is different about Appgate? This is it, multi-tunnel capability. Our client can connect to multiple gateways in multiple sites at the exact same time. And this becomes a very useful tool. So it's decentralized, distributed. You can connect to data that's on-premise. You can connect to data that's in the cloud. And as an administrator, and I found that this is a really good example I heard the other day. If you're a network administrator, you will have hardware issues where you need to create firewall rules and control hardware access. But then there are users. And network administrators are never very big fans of user requests. So how do you keep your users happy? And there's a bit in the middle where it crosses over, where your network is configured accurately, your users are happy, and that's the bit that you want to get to. With Appgate SDP, you can actually take all of that user interaction, all of those entitlements, please can I have access to this, all of that management that's done there, and you can move that away from your network administration and get other teams in your organization to do it. So you could put it through your service management tool. You could put it through your Active Directory management team. There are different ways in which to do it. But now all of a sudden you can use your network administration team to build a solid network configuration and get all of the other user requests. Because basically, if you remember, our VPN is now on the client, our network access control is all done by the client, all those micro connections to the different resources are all done on the client. Your network isn't doing that anymore. So we have the ability to scale, we have high performance, and from a resilience and availability perspective, you can have multiple gateways and multiple controllers all over your organization. You can give the gateways weights, so they are active, masters, and you can give them weights for load balancing. If you're using cloud or VMware solution, hypervisor solutions, you can use those tools for auto scaling and for backup, etc. Screenshots, so as a solution, Appgate SDP radically changes the game. It takes your old-fashioned VPN solution with your in-house network access control that's doing all the hard work, and we're moving that to the perimeter, to the client device, any client that you've got out there, anyone trying to access your network, and that's where the actual work is taking place. So we've turned it around. Okay, that is the slides. Let's have a look at the actual Appgate. I was going to talk about VPN versus ZTNA versus SDP versus NAC and what's the difference. This is a really good article, and I'll put this into the chat later. Okay. First thing I want to show you is on our demo environment. This is the one that we use internally. You'll see here that we have controllers in North Virginia. We have controllers in London. This is the Appgate client. This is the center of our universe. All of our connections go from the client to the gateways. Here are gateways. We've got 3 gateways in North Virginia. We've got 2 gateways in Oregon. We have an on-premise data center in Boston and Dallas. And we have Microsoft Azure in Iowa. We've got Google Cloud. So that's what I wanted to show you. The next thing I need to show you would be the Appgate client. Here we go. So from a presentation point of view, we have switched on everything. because we're trying to show off. We want to show you all the things that we can do within Appgate. From a user point of view, you would probably switch a lot of these things off because you don't want to overcomplicate it for the user. Some users are more technical than others, but some users just...
Philip, excuse me, we have a white screen now, only white screen without any demonstration. Can you please check your demo?
Okay. Resume share.
We just see a white screen now.
Okay, let's stop that. Let's just try share. Okay. How's that?
Oh yeah, great.
Okay.
Now we see.
Sorry, guys. Okay. So, are you able to see our demo environment? There we go. Okay. So here's the demo environment. Here's the client that I wanted to show you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect, and I'm probably going to lose you for a second thinking about it. This Appgate client, which is this image here in the middle, is going to connect to the controller. It's probably going to connect to London. We're going to use Active Directory, but we could use other tools like Okta, etc. I'm also going to show you how we integrate with third-party tools. For us in our demo environment, we've used ServiceNow, but you can use pretty much any third-party tools. Our APIs are very well documented. So let's just connect. And yeah, so what's happening now is the client is communicating with the controller. You can see here that the controller has so now you can see here that I have access to, here's North Virginia, so here's my North Virginia one. Here's London, and here's the London one. So you can see here that the gateways on my client are equal to the gateways that have got in my demonstration. And again, you don't have to see all this. We've switched it on for the processes of presentation. In the real world, your end users don't need to see any of these things. However, what is quite useful, shortcuts. So if I'm just using my browser and I am just working away, I've got some shortcuts on my browser. I can click on the shortcut here. It takes me to the Corp App 1 site. So this is, so as a user, I can still work the exact same way that I would normally be working, no problem at all. But I also have shortcuts here. So what I can do with shortcuts is I can create an actual dedicated link to something. So this is a really useful tool. So not only am I allowing the users to continue working in the normal way without any interruption at all, without any additional training, what I can do is provide clear access to corporate data that needs. For example, in our organization, I'm unable to access Salesforce unless I've got the client open and I click on the link here. That's just how we've configured it internally at Appgate, but it's a good example of how you can control access to different locations. The other thing I do need to do is connect to the controller quickly, which I can only do because now I've connected to the Appgate client. And you'll see here that this is just a normal page. The example would be if you have a first-line technician or a support team, and you want to give them read-only access to something, they want to see if this server is up and running, then that's fine, it's no problem. However, if I wanted to do something additional, for example, if I wanted to SSH onto this particular server and do some work, I could do so. I'm actually going to use the shortcut here. So I click on the Appgate shortcut, and you'll see that it's asking me for a one-time password. And what we're going to use the one-time password on here. And what we've done is we've said, okay, on a normal day, for a normal user, you're normally allowed to access this thing, no problem at all. However, if you want to do something else, then you need to add additional authentication. We call it step-up MFA. And as you can see here, my SSH is almost connected. I've got a permission denied. I'll have to figure that out. But you can see that the SSH is connected. But more importantly, you saw that I was asked for additional information. So I'm going to log into this is the Appgate Controller. Anyone who's used a web interface will understand this is very easy to use. Again, it's going to ask me for multi-factor authentication. I'm not going to get it before the time's up. Let's try this one, 7, and that lets me in. So again, and this is a really good example. If you've got a tool that you use for your entire network, having multi-factor authentication before you can access it is critical. So I've accessed this the controller. You can see here, this is the dashboard. We've got a fancy message from North Virginia. The gateway hasn't been working. You can see that my other appliances are connected here. You can see the apps that we've got, the top entitlement to use. But what I really want to show you is the active sessions. And you can see here, this is me, I've connected. And it's going to show us some details. So as you can see, I've accessed Corp App 1, which is this IP address here. This is the one on our demo that I've accessed. And it's allowed me to do that. And then with Step Up MFA, it's asked me for additional information. So then that's where I got the one-time password to come in. So when I click on the Corp App 1, it takes me through. So these are the session details. And the way that we control that is through, this is getting slightly more technical, but this is through policies. So we are, what are you trying to access? This is the policies. The entitlements are who is trying to access and what the conditions are, what conditions are in place. So with, here we go, one-time password. Let's click on that. I even have multiple options. So with it's asking me for a password, or I could use a YubiKey, or I could use a multi-factor authentication. So if I'm missing my YubiKey, I've still got another way to get in, and I've configured that within the conditions to access it. The next thing I'd like to show you quickly would be accessing actually, I'll just put this OTP key in. I see there's some questions coming in the chat. We can get to those in a few seconds if you like. Let's do this quickly. There we go. So let's let me back in. So the next thing would be our integration with third-party tools. So I'm going to use ServiceNow as an example. And what I want to do is I want to access a management server that we have in North Virginia. So I'm just going to copy that IP address. And I'm going to open up the terminal. Let's use this one instead. And I'm going to ping this management server. So just ping that. And if you look at the client on the side, we're going to get a message. So you'll see that my ping is timed out. I have not got access to that management server. So the next thing that Appgate does is not only does it control access to your network, but it actually tells you why you don't have access. So I have a message here. Read the message. So Appgate has a message for me. It's saying here that I don't have access because I don't have a ticket in ServiceNow. And this is an example that we've created. It's a very simple example, but it's just to show you. So we're going to click on ServiceNow. Here is an incident. If I change this from resolved to in progress, and I update that, you'll see that now that I have a ticket, a correct ticket, I have access to that server. Again, a very simple example, but it just shows you how we can integrate with third-party tools. And where this becomes really interesting would be if you built a service request within your ITSM tool, you could get access to, or even with your change management policies, you can have access to that server to update it, to patch it, to do what needs to be done during these times. And we would control that through entitlements. So I think I'm going to stop there and see if I can read the questions. Is it? So I'm not sure if you can see these. All right, these are good questions. Okay. So using a password, is it possible to use certificate for PC Smart Card? Again, we can configure that. And as you saw with the one-time password I had there, within the system, we have multi-factor authentication providers, and you can put anything you need in there as well. So we have a FIDO card here, FIDO2 provider. We also work, basically for us, our identity provider is SAML, LDAP, and kind of Radius. Takes a little bit extra effort, but we can do that. And is it possible to use RDP as one of the apps? It actually is. I'm not sure if I've got one available, but yes. So as you saw here, I've got a shortcut to Corp App 1 SSH. So SSH and RDP, you can create that as a shortcut. So add a new entitlement access condition, add a new condition. I can and here are the MFA providers, and I can add it in there. And that's how you can configure that. Again, the guys at Head Technology have all the skills to help you with this, and we can work with you. So, Alexander, I was wondering now if there was some discussion, if we could have a conversation, if there's anything that I've missed, or if there's anything else that you'd like to see.
Phil, did you finish your demo?
I think so.
Yes. So, guys, if you have any question, you have two variants. You can put your question in the chat area or in the special area for questions and answers. Please let us know what is interesting for you.
I think the important thing to take away is the fact that a zero trust approach to your enterprise security is really important. How you manage all those different parts is equally important. And the very first part of that would be network access. Who is allowed on your network? And once you've allowed them on the network, then you can control everything else from there on using identity management tools, permission access tools, whatever tools that you've got, and you can monitor them as well using monitoring tools, SIEM, Splunk, all these kind of different things. But for us at Appgate, our focus, and the only thing we pretty much do is allow or not allow people onto your network.